If you try to find a way to limit your child's access and use of apps that are just for fun, like games that aren't really educational and promote more use of education and learning apps, watch this video. I'm going to show you what I do to balance my son's use of apps on the iPad. My name is Barbara Fernandez. I am a speech-language pathologist, the CEO and founder of Smarty Ears, a company that designs educational apps for speech, language, and communication. I have designed over 60 apps available on the App Store. But today I'm here to talk about a feature on the iPad that is parental restriction that I use every day, and it's so useful for managing my son's use of the iPad on a daily basis. My awesome cousin, Alessandra from Brazil, sent me a message asking for some app suggestions for her child. I sent her the app that my son really enjoys using, where he learned the periodic table, something that is really specific to his interest. She complained to me that she struggles getting her son away from soccer apps. I told her, let me record a video to show you how you can still keep that app installed on the iPad without being drastic and deleting the app and causing major drama, but limiting the use of that app. The iOS 12, and I believe also the iOS 11, which is the previous iOS version on the iPad, allows adults to control how many minutes kids spend on game apps, entertainment apps, and even educational apps. There are even controls on a sleep time, which means that at that time, your child has to be disconnected from the iPad. In my house, I set up a time of 5:15 in the evening. That's the time that all of the apps end up being locked on my son's iPad. Let me open up the iPad screen so that I can actually show you guys how to access all these settings and make use of this incredible parental control on the iOS 11, iOS 12 on the iPads. So what you guys are seeing right now is the screen of my son's iPad. And I will confess that the majority of the apps that I have here, I want to say about 95%, are very much educational. Even the game apps that he likes to use are somewhat educational. And this is something that I am a firm believer in. There is a way to do entertainment while learning. But as you can see here, he has a folder. Initially, he had certain interests in, we went through a phase of space and the periodic table, and he moved on to geography. And you can still find things like a game of Risk that somewhat involves maps and geography and learning about the continents, that it's in a game format. He really enjoys playing Risk. Lately, he really enjoys Tap Nation too, that it's another app, that it's a little, a very interesting way of just playing Risk, but tapping the screen. But what I really want to show you guys is if you go here on General and click on Screen Time, you see here these 4 sections: downtime, app limits, always allowed, and content and privacy restrictions. I go through and set up each one of these things. So for example, downtime is the time that you want basically the iPad and all of the apps, no matter how long the child has been using the iPad, to lock up. So every day between 5:30 p.m. and 9 a.m., my child's iPad is locked. And the way it ends up looking is all the apps are completely locked out, and when he taps on that, he can't access any of the apps. Sometimes if he's using the iPad and the 5:30 time reaches, then he gets logged out of all the apps in the iPad, and he just puts it up and moves on to goes to play outside. So this is a very useful tool, and I'd say it's the minimum. It gives him time to really start settling down away from the screens to be able to go to sleep at 7:30, 8 o'clock. Now, the other cool area is this section here called App Limits. I do wish they would improve it a little more and make it very specific app by app. And what they've done is they've grouped apps by their category. These categories are picked by the app developers. And you see here they have social networking, games, entertainment, creativity, production. And even with the entertainment, you have some music and Toca elements. These are the only 2 entertainment apps that he currently have on this iPad. I have a 40 minutes now a day that he can use these apps. Now I have, this number is much bigger than what I have put. I probably would have put 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, but he had a tonsil and adenoids removed last week, and we allowed more screen time. But here's another section for games, which includes Risk and Tap Nations, those 2 apps that I mentioned earlier. If you see here, he can do an hour and 30 minutes. That's what I've set up because he was on recovery from that surgery, needed something to do that isn't outside time. And you can change that time to 30 minutes, an hour, 15 minutes. You still keep that app on the iPad. You just give your child a lot of time for having fun on the device. Now, the other section is educational, which is the vast majority. We have 66 apps here that are educational on this device, and he can spend 2 hours on educational apps. Obviously, there is a lot of screen time here. We are over 4 hours of screen time, 4 hours and 10 minutes, but this was because he was sick. You can adjust that as you need. No judgment here. Now, the other cool section, we have this thing called Always Allowed. Always Allowed are the apps that even after he reaches the time, it could be at 5:30 or it could have been he has reached 2 hours of educational apps. Once the iPad locks at the end of the day, there's 2 apps that I have allowed my son to use, and one is Prep Ed. It's also an educational app, and he has a great math app. It's great for math. So he is, even though he's a pre-K student, he's playing this app for 4th grade math. And I always allowed him to have access to those 2 apps. So if he wants to do iPad time after he's reached the limit, these are the apps that he would have to play. And finally, you have this other section called Content and Privacy Restrictions. This area is where I turn on and off installing in apps. And this, sometimes if I remove an app for my son and he's going through that withdrawal phase, I turn off the ability to install apps so he's not going through the app store to download the app again. Right now, he is very much into anatomy. And I downloaded these 3 apps. He's been really enjoying the human body and this other anatomy app. Those are the apps that he currently is enjoying. And as you can see, I've organized. We have some play apps, math apps, anatomy, space. He used to be big in space. But the important thing here for me is for you to know that you can limit the use of these apps based on using the restriction from the Apple settings. Well, I hope this was useful to you because now I've got to record this whole video in Portuguese or put some captions in Portuguese. Have a wonderful day, guys.